All right, I'd like to call to order the Canton Township Board of Trustees Planning Commission and the Master Plan Advisory Committee to order at 5:01 p.m. for the record. And I'm going to hand this off to our staff member, Erin, of the Master Plan Advisory Committee. She's going to tell us how this works and how we're going to get through the evening. Thank you.
Hey, hello everybody. Thank you. I'm so glad you were all able to attend. So, thank you. We have with us the Board of Trustees, we have the Planning Commission, and the Master Plan Advisory Board members. And I'm very excited that we have members of the public here, and as well as administration staff to help facilitate this evening. This project with Cherry Hill Town Square project has been a work in the making for quite some time. It's been thought through the administration team, and the intent was to facilitate and use some grant monies that we had been awarded from Wayne County to revitalize the town square in Cherry Hill Village. And this is a project that has been in tandem with the master plan, and so we wanted to make sure that we included everyone from the Board of Trustees, Planning Commission, Master Plan Advisory Board, so you can see it first and give us your thoughts and your opinions and your ideas and how we can facilitate this project and make it the best that it can be. Okay? So the township has been consulting with OHM, and this is Tony Slanik, and he's going to walk us through his presentation this evening.
So my name is Tony Slanik. I am from Columbus, Ohio, and took the 3-hour drive up here today to talk to you guys about something that I find extremely exciting and very interesting. This is a project that was brought to the table to really look at reimagining a place that might have missed a couple opportunities along the way, and what would that reimagining look like, and how would it feel, and how would it attract public and private dollars. Public dollars being grant monies and things of that nature from the state and from the county, but also private sector dollars. How do we create the commercial investments, the retail investments, small shops, great distilleries, breweries, restaurants, all the things that we all, when we close our eyes, we wanted to see happen in Cherry Hill Village, but hasn't happened quite to the level that we thought it was going to be. So the part of that conversation is really trying to attract and leverage public assets to create program to allow and attract for private sector investment at Cherry Hill Village. This is an aerial of the village, and obviously, as you can see, the schoolhouse in the middle, surrounded by parking lot, a little bit of green space. We have our fountain area along Independence Drive and Cherry Hill Road. We have the schoolhouse road, and we have what we saw as an opportunity to really create a destination in the town center. And so a little bit of background, what we have to do from a planning exercise is to really start to look at and understand the whole picture from the financial and economic end of things. And then that starts to help us drive program and start to better understand who our audience is, who they could be, who we're trying to attract, and what we're trying to accomplish from an investment strategy standpoint. And so part of that is to really truly understand the mix related to Cherry Hill Village, and then certainly Canton as a whole, and then the region. And so, the greatest effect is the closest buyers and users of space. And so we just need to get a handle on what those things are. So the medium retail estate price is $573. For in context, that's more expensive than 95% of the neighborhoods in Michigan. Again, we look at the average rental price, $23.50, significantly expensive when you look at other Michigan neighborhoods. Real estate, medium to large estates. It's this area and this neighborhood is full of pretty significantly sized homes, and single-family homes. There's also apartment complexes and mid-rise apartments. Occupations, we're looking for wealthy and educated folks that live here, and they have stately homes, and they're on the upper level parts of their career, and they want to live comfortably. Occupations, again, working population. Most of these folks are, in the management end of things and in the executive space. And so again, a lot of expendable income, opportunities to attract them to the downtown to be able to spend that. Target demographics. We're looking at lots of families. So we're looking from cradle to grave type of program to basically live here your entire life. And so that's an important notion when we start to get into some of the semantics of the concept design. Diversity. Again, it's a very diverse neighborhood. We have German immigrants, we have Indian, we have Asian, we have Irish, and so we're pretty diverse in terms of the overall composite of the neighborhood. And we're also 63% of us, the households, are English speakers. The average one-way commute is 30 to 45 minutes. That probably doesn't account for the pandemic times when a lot of people work from home, but I think it's going to start ramping back up to that level in terms of just that one-way commute. And drivers are using, sometimes they're carpooling, and most people are just using their private automobile. So we have to look at all that stuff to kind of get a picture of what we're going to do, from a leveraging standpoint. And so, the big question when we brought the committees together was to really, what happened? Why was Cherry Hill Village not lived up to its full potential from a development and commercial aspect of things? It's killing the world on the residential side. We have a diversity of housing stock. We have multifamily. We have single family. We have large estate homes. They're beautifully designed and articulated. The neighborhoods are very walkable. There's all the things that we knew were really good ideas back when this was originally conceived. The one thing that sort of got missed was this commercial component. How do we attract that commercial buyers and users to locate in Cherry Hill Village? We have all of the parts of the recipe. So we obviously understand there's a slow growth of the commercial district. There's sort of this lack of retail options. There's no big sort of driver or catalyst to attract people to the town center and the core of Cherry Hill. And one of the things that we sort of discovered along the pathway here was that it's sort of being received a little bit as an exclusive neighborhood. So instead of kind of thinking of all of Canton, the Cherry Hill is kind of sort of considered it into and of itself. It's sort of an enclave of, rather than weaving within the fabric of all of Canton. And so when we sort of hear all these things as planners and urban designers and architects and engineers, we start to think about, let's try to get our arm around the data to support what we're going to be talking about in terms of the ideas and the opportunities that we see in front of us. So from a building data standpoint, we have 100 rooftops. So to see the spot in the middle, that's kind of like ground zero. So let's assume that's the schoolhouse. Within a 5-minute walk of that is 100 rooftops. Within a 5 to 10-minute walk are 460 rooftops. Within a 10-minute walk, we have 560 rooftops. That includes single family, and a rooftop would also could be considered, higher density homes, apartments, townhomes, things of that nature. So we're talking a significant amount of people living within a 5 to 10-minute walk of a commercial district that really kind of isn't there, but kind of is. And so that right there, packaged in a different way, starts to be able to attract investment from the private side. So there has to be an understanding that there's a significant amount of people that live within a 10-minute walk of this area, and where's the opportunity for the private sector side? When we looked at parking, we saw that there's about 600 spaces in the district that we're talking about. And so, we have surface parking about 300, we have on-street parking about 300. And so, there's a public parking lot, there's a private parking lot, and so it's dispersed pretty evenly. And so parking to us and to me isn't really a problem. Walking is a problem, okay? And so we have an even distribution, and we have a decent amount of parking. It's not to say that we don't need more parking, but we need to be smart about what we do with the parking and where we put the excess parking as the commercial activity starts to drive the opportunity. So the other thing we have to understand too is land ownership. Where are our township-owned parcels, and where can we create opportunities to create public assets that become an attractor to private investors? And so we look at township-owned parcels, and then we look at potential redevelopment parcels. And again, all of a sudden, you start to get this pretty significant amount of space, pretty significant amount of land that there's an opportunity to do something a little bit different than we've been doing before. And therein lies the opportunity. The land aggregation and the connection between all these different parcels is something I don't see very often. It's usually mismatched, and all the way down the street, you got, what they call like missing teeth. To get all these things to be cohesive is a trick. And so the trick we've sort of already kind of have in the bag related to land ownership and our ability to really leverage the opportunity that we have in front of us. So this is sort of the mapping of pieces in play, potential opportunities for us to do some really neat things. So when we think about the town center, we want to, a lot of the committee and a lot of the conversations that we had amongst individuals and in groups was this idea of, well, if you land the big fish, then there's going to be all this development's going to come. So we got to get this big distillery, and then they're going to, or this big restaurant, this signature restaurant, or this signature business that will start to become a catalyst and a driver for other businesses. So say you land, there's a restaurant in my neck of the woods called Cameron Mitchell. And so what ends up happening is you land at Cameron Mitchell, and then 3 or 4 other places start to be interested in locating close proximity to Cameron Mitchell, because all of a sudden in the evening, Cameron Mitchell has a 2.5-hour wait. And then mom and dad and the kids are like, well, we can't wait 2.5 hours. Dad's starving, and all the things. And so they end up going over to the other restaurant. So there's like these attractors and these things that sort of use each other to bounce and grow. And so sort of in the same way is sort of this idea of like urban design and creating program and creating place. You want to have not just one thing, you want to have a series of meaningful experiences as part of what this place wants to feel like and look like and grow to. And so, when you have the big target and the big plain lands, those are very few and far between. And so I think that part of the mindset that we have to have in Canton Township is this stepping into growth and making really smart, good decisions now about where we use public dollars to promote and attract private investment, and then kind of step into more investments as that flywheel starts to turn and you start to see those opportunities from the private side sort of rear their heads. And so again, in the core, near the schoolhouse, is thinking about the program and thinking about this experience of place, is we want to have lots of different types of experiences that you can have. So a very flexible but very driven program in terms of pieces and parts. The other thing that we talked about was the historical village, and sort of in my line of work, it's sort of this haphazard configuration of buildings, and where is the opportunity to sort of bring these all together to create an experience, and you link all these things and have some movement and connectivity amongst these different historical objects to create a campus of these things, to create a park-like setting to really start to set the tone for the opportunity to create that special place where you start to drive traffic because it becomes a destination. So it's thinking about reconfiguring the historical village. The good news is we're not as part of the future schemes I'm going to be showing you guys, we're not really moving any structures. We're just tying them all together in a meaningful way, in a park-like way, and then having places for new structures to come and be located to really create the essence of what that place wants to be and wants to be in the future. The other area that we thought was really interesting is the stormwater ponds for the adjacent single-family neighborhood. And that we saw as a huge opportunity to really incorporate a water feature and some sort of driver from an aesthetic standpoint to sort of create that destination as part of that park-like setting. And then we also looked at the potential reconfiguration of Constitution Street as it relates to the garage property, and basically the fountain area. So for the few times I've been here, and from all the stories I've heard from lots of the folks that I've worked with in Canton, the fountain is this sort of not political football. It's a football, right? And the football is that it's there, it's pretty, but it's underutilized. Sometimes there's water in it, sometimes there's not. There's not a lot of people using it. It's an inactive space, and you're sort of surrounded by roads. And so, Cold Stone, you get your ice cream, you walk over to the fountain, sure. But is there a way better thing to do with that property? We believe so. There's also, just in terms of an overall idea of just sort of enhancing connections and walkability amongst the neighborhood and making the pedestrian connections feel safe and feel that you're connecting overcross all these different roads and creating a safety aspect of this campus. So we're kind of creating this kind of like town core center campusy thing. And it really starts to lend itself to this really neat place that's safe, inviting, and interesting. This is sort of our analysis of what we heard from the community and the leadership and what we took on and understood by walking around, diving into some stories that we saw online and some thoughts about how things were designed and considered and the opportunities that we saw from an economic development standpoint. And so we sort of had some takeaways. One was this desire for the preservation of the schoolhouse at the current location. And so this is sort of like ground zero in our minds, and a huge asset that we can use to really move the project into position of this sort of iconic opportunity to land the schoolhouse, to create value out of the schoolhouse, and make it part of the icon of what this place wants to be and can be in the future. We also talked about creating a destination through a series of meaningful experiences in the public realm to attract that private sector investment. We saw the opportunity to create opportunities for affordable housing. We saw an opportunity to attract regional destinations and anchors like the breweries and distilleries through this sort of public space program management. And obviously, this pedestrian connectivity, which is paramount in how all these projects work and sustain and really grow over time. We wanted to create a structure and organizing the structure of this historic campus for flexible programming. So one of the things that we heard was this idea of there's these sort of two themes that were in part of what Cherry Hill Village wanted to be in the downtown. One was sort of this art component, and one was sort of this historical component. And so is there an ability to merge those two things together within the public realm to basically enhance that destination? Was there an opportunity to rebrand Cherry Hill Village and the town center into a local, instead of a local asset, can it become a regional attraction and a regional asset? All of a sudden, it's more than just a neighborhood pouring into the downtown, but it becomes a regional destination. And how do we create that? There is conversations about, in the history of the project, there's been apprehension by the private sector to grow something in the downtown because of a perceived parking issue. They were worried about, well, I can't park my business, we can't park my facility or my idea. And so there's a little bit of pushback on the private side. So the conversation became about, well, is there a garage opportunity? And where would that be located if we did? And how would that influence the opportunities that we can do to promote and leverage the area? We also, back to the ponds behind the single family area, was there an opportunity to partner with the land ownership of the pond area and broker some deal where we can create more of an asset out of the detention ponds? So the detention ponds right now is a function of engineering and stormwater management. But can we enhance this to become something that's more of an asset to the community and becomes an attraction that you want to walk around, picnic around, and create a destination out of? And then last and not least is sort of this idea of enhancing streetscapes and the sense of place and creating that opportunity there. So again, this is how we talk to each other in planning speak. In terms of these diagrams and these sort of like, how do we configure all these things and keep everything in motion? So all these diagrams speak to planners and they tell us stories about where the opportunity might lie. So we started talking about regional destinational parks, the historic village. We call the Triangle Lot, which is a piece of ground that's been on sale for a little while now. We talk about the series of meaningful experiences by the schoolhouse. There's the stormwater area. There's this opportunity on the south side of Cherry Hill Road to create a mixed-use development out of the garage area, and looking at that pond or the little pond water feature as another opportunity to develop and redevelop. We saw this opportunity along Cherry Hill Road on the south side for a mixed use. Was there an opportunity for a parking structure on that side to facilitate the growth of the town center? So what we have to do when we get lots of pieces and parts all pushed together is start to create zones out of these things and get a real handle on the acreages that we're talking about so that we can start to do some math about density levels and about how you can potentially park these things and where does the public space weave in and out of these spaces to create that attraction. And so that's what we did. We started to have conversations about each of the zones, and we use our committees to say, what would you see as part of this zone? What are the opportunities that this zone presents to you in the context of where it is today and within the context of when we close our eyes and think of what this place could be in the future, what would it be then? And so we had a lot of very interesting conversations, and part of that, one of the bigger exercises that we typically do is we throw a bunch of pictures out on the floor and we pick up the things that start to speak to you about this place, and programs and ideas and design and activities that would be part of this place to create that magic, to create that public sector destination that speaks to and starts to drive for private sector investment. So this is sort of what we came up with as part of the concept master plan. And you can kind of see now that each of the zones started to end up having some nomenclature that went along with it, and then it starts to speak to the form and the nature of the master plan. And so this is typically what comes out of a master planning process. And it's super painful for me to walk through a two-dimensional picture of what these ideas are. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a model and kind of show you how all this stuff works and how it feels. And I think it's going to build a little bit of excitement. And then I'm going to go through a series of freeze frames and talk about each part of the plan and why it makes sense and why it works. So I'm actually not going to say too much. I'm just going to let you guys watch this thing. What you're going by now is the Humanities Building, and then out to what we believe could be a major attraction in terms of the enhancements of the detention pond area. Off to the distance, you can see the single-family homes. You can see a lot of the trail systems interconnecting for walkability, for recreation. We have lots of pockets within the park for different activities related to picnicking, related to just hanging out, walking, recreating, being with family and friends, creating that park-like setting. We have the hill that houses the fountain area. The fountain area is really exciting in terms of kind of creating that regional destination. We have a lot of conversations. I'm going to do it one more time. And a lot of conversations about the fountain area. Well, it's 6 months out of the year we can't use the dang thing. And so there's lots of fountain areas that have the winterizing moment and become a winter asset, and we have a lot of program around that opportunity. And so we talked a lot about what the park does during the fall and the winter. And there's again, when I do all the freeze framing, I'll start to talk to both summer, spring, fall, and the different program that we can talk about to create these destinations. I'm going to kind of walk through the south side of Cherry Hill. So what you're kind of looking at now is the garage site adjacent to the green space by the fountain. Off to the left is that fountain parcel and what that could potentially redevelop to. One of the most important things as you're hearing this and seeing these things is that we've taken a significant portion of the ground in Cherry Hill Town Center and we've thought of it as a park. But the key pieces to creating the park and those public assets are to trigger opportunities on the private side to invest near these places where they're regional destination, where they're drawing people like crazy to be a part of it. And that's where the opportunity to create the return on investment lies, is around the fringe of this incredible green space, park space, public space. So these are just freeze frames of the model, and then they basically have a little filter over top of them to make them look rendered and a little bit more soft. So what we're seeing right now, this is Cherry Hill Road, Ridge Road. And so this is the schoolhouse. And so what we're trying to do is activate the area around the schoolhouse. with lots of family-friendly activities. And this is really the core of the project, and really the destination created as it relates to starting to create the opportunities for investment in mixed-use facilities across the street and adjacent to, and then opportunities on the backside with the Triangle property as a potential in play, and then how that all kind of ties back to the historical village, so that this becomes this series of meaningful experiences for everybody, right? And so one of the most interesting and fun conversations that we had related to this concept was the idea of this hill. What we wanted to do is create some topography. We wanted to create some sort of separation between the town center and the adjacent homes and the single family, and create a kind of a pocket. And so when you start walking through the model, you start to understand like how this thing really works, but it also creates a destination related to a regional attraction of art on the top. We also talk about winter activities of sled riding and things of that nature, and then just hillside type of environments for what we're talking about is some sort of stage area for live music and entertainment. And then, so we kind of have a constant idea of the fountain feature and the activities that families would have, and this hard surface plaza areas adjacent to the fountain activity, and then kind of allowing that to be part of a function of a potential restaurant or some kind of mixed-use activity with frontage along the hill and along the fountain area for outdoor eating facility and things like that. So you can kind of get into it a little bit differently here. Again, the hillside and the fountain feature, the schoolhouse, and these ideas of sort of these plaza areas, hardscape and softscape, creating that park-like setting along, within the town center area, and really these paths to sort of connect back to and around, to making these connections all the way up to historical village on the other side of the street. And then how these businesses along Cherry Hill would really want to be on this side because of this major attraction, people coming over and buying and doing things on that other side of the street, creating that activity. You can see from this picture is really looking at those detention ponds, digging them out a little bit deeper, making them a little bit bigger, sort of softening them up a little bit, adding some water features, and then creating these series of paths and deck structures and intertwined with the water, kind of bringing people out to the water area, being able to have activities, still act as a function of a stormwater management component, but also have a heck of a feature related to just the aesthetic and creating that destination and creating that venue and purpose. This is just kind of a little bit more of a view of how this all interconnects and ties into this Triangle piece of property that we had a lot of conversations about. One of the things that we're trying to do is create that big attractor. So we didn't want to leave out the big fish just in case the big fish actually happen to show up on the hook. And so we want to be able to say, look at this opportunity to create, there's these breweries out there right now that are becoming almost like park-like settings, right? There's not just a bar. It's an experience. You go in, it's plazas, it's picnic tables, it's fire pits, it's trellises, it's gardens, it's all these different things. They're literally basically like little mini parks as it relates to breweries and distilleries. Well, if we can bring that setting to a potential user and operator, I think that we've just solved a lot of problems for them related to making that investment work. And where would it work best? We think it right here. Again, it could be here, it could be there, it could be across the street. What we're trying to show them is that there's this opportunity to interconnect the big fish and the aesthetics and the views and vistas and the program and experiences as part of their offering from a business standpoint. Again, looking at the water feature, the laydown area where you can kind of see. Sorry if I got someone in the eye. Just kind of the laydown area for picnic blankets, things of that nature. If there could potentially be a band or a stage area here along the schoolhouse. Again, lots of plaza space, open space, seating space, for larger events and things of that nature. Again, looking at it from a different vantage point, what the spaces can look like and how they would be used by people as part of that park. Again, creating, mixed use opportunities to recapture that tax revenue, to recapture opportunities to really embellish the park and create that, that full day of experiences. Another thing that we talked about was opportunities to really invite the food truck industry. So we heard a story when we first started the project about Slows having a food truck. They parked it at Cherry Hill Village Town Center, and there was a line a mile long down the street of people waiting for this thing. So food attracts people, right? Parks attract people. So we create an opportunity to really have food trucks as part, of the experience along Ridge Road, and potentially allow the schoolhouse to be sort of like a food shelter, some kind of almost like a picnic pavilion as part of its program. And there's other things that we can do with the schoolhouse too. But again, allowing these spaces to be created by virtue of allowing the food trucks to come and creating that opportunity for business. Again, this is out in front of the Humanities Building, potential beer garden area, and kind of removing what's there right now, which is basically just a road to nowhere that ties back to the Schoolhouse Drive. We talked about these almost like little cabanas. We're calling park cabinets. We see these things in a lot of downtowns that are in the cooler climates of just having an opportunity for a fire and just you can rent these things and create a revenue stream out of it from the Park Services standpoint, and then they basically for family and friends to join, and they have the cabin, and the cabins will be labeled, and then they'd be scattered across the park for family events and things of that nature. Climbing walls, again, series of experiences for kids. There'll be playgrounds, climbing walls, pathways, all kinds of stuff to interconnect things. Again, mixed-use development showing across the Cherry Hill Road in terms of these investment strategies as it relates to the park development, what we could potentially do with the pond area and how that would work from a development standpoint. This is sort of already in play. This is a property along Cherry Hill Road South on the south side there's a conversation right now about a parking lot that could potentially get moved to a public-private partnership that would create a parking garage that would allow and facilitate a lot of growth within the downtown related to commercial investments and then having public parking. Again, the nature play and boardwalk system, what the potential distillery and that view. So if you put that view on the internet and you tell everybody you're serving drinks at this place, everyone's going to show up. This is another conversation that we had. And again, there's a series of conversations that we had that kind of in the composite created this tapestry of things to do. And that's what we felt like was the missing thing, was these things that we would do when we were at Cherry Hill Village. And the historical Village Green became one of those things that was pretty exciting to us. You can kind of see the existing buildings and architecture in terms of where they actually lie now, and then how we would configure a system, both in terms of a functional system and a connection system of having meaningful green space to allow for events related to the different structures. If there's a wine tasting and you go from place to place, we're trying to create program out of these investments that we've made in the history of us, moving these buildings here, bringing them back to life, and then creating a reason to come and visit. The program is going to be so important in terms of how we do that to create the visitation that we're looking at. But we think that it needs to be configured and it needs to be sort of weaved through how we would use these different spaces to have them perform the best, both from an aesthetic standpoint, a function standpoint, and our ability to leverage it, for economic development standpoint. So again, just a series of pathways and making it more of a park-like setting and creating these meaningful spaces to allow for those things to happen. And I'm going to kind of leave you with this, and we'll go into the Q&A. So, Cherry Hill Village. We think that there's an opportunity here for some sort of major art component. We put cherries up there. This is one of those iconic things where people go because they want to get their picture by it. You're going to do a selfie by it, and then anyone that lives in the village, they're going to have their family picture, or at least their kids, up by the cherries every year as they grow from little babies all the way to they're heading off to college. And this is one of those iconic things that lots of great parks across the nation and across the world have these things. And I think that there's a huge opportunity to incorporate something like this that really starts to drive the traffic along with the fountain, along with the pathways, along with the recreation space, along with the programming and the blending of art and history and all the things that this place wanted to be over time. These things can get created when we reimagine the spaces, lots of spaces that we own and private sector that wants to help us fulfill these promises and create these places to attract private money in Cherry Hill Village from a commercial aspect. So with that, I'm going to hang this up and go off to questions.
Since that, we'll start with the Board of Trustees. Does anyone from the board have comments, questions? Yes.
Where'd he go? Oh, hi.
Hey there, sorry.
Yeah, Steve Snyderman, Board of Trustees. Looks really interesting, a lot to absorb, and interested in digging into it a little bit more. The question is, at one point we had talked about moving the schoolhouse to the historical area. Is that a consideration you looked at? And then also the municipal services building possibilities with that, the big building in the middle there, north. Yeah, could you comment on those?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations about the schoolhouse. So the schoolhouse is on the National Register of Historic Places. So we have to be careful about how we move it, where we move it, how that makes sense. We talked about it as an icon and really kind of like the center of gravity for the park. And it's been there for lots of years, and it's sort of like a focal point. And I think that's a wonderful addition to be able to have the park around something that is historical and contextual. And so there was lots of conversations of moving it over to the historic village. And then we sort of felt, boy, this feels right here. Can we move it? Sure. Is there more opportunity for different types of program space and park space? Sure. But we felt that we can make it the best it could possibly be in a high-performing building for us, related to some kind of a food court. Is it some kind of pavilion that you can rent? Can we use it in a way that supports the park? And the answer was more that than anything else. And so we felt that we wanted to keep it there. But we also knew that there was much more process in moving this thing forward, where we wanted to get more input and really have more of a public discussion about what happens with the schoolhouse. So we had the original few concepts had it removed and had it incorporated, and we kind of moved toward incorporation. Same thing with the humanities building. Not the same thing with the humanities building. We always felt that thing belonged and stayed. It was a great asset to the park, but we wanted to right size the road network around it that we don't really need, support it with the parking lot behind it, maybe enhance that parking lot a little bit so that it become more of an asset to the park during off hours, make it more of like a plaza space, and obviously public parking during non-peak hours for the humanities building.
Did that answer your question? Okay, this came from one of the comment cards. Are we just looking for high-income residents? Is there a place for lower income?
We actually had quite a bit of conversation about affordable housing, and even sort of looking at that as part of the triangle lot up in the corner where the distillery ended up showing up. We had concepts that talked about affordable housing. We also talked about it so behind the historical park, there's a series of publicly owned lands that we felt that was a good idea to incorporate affordable housing. Affordable housing is super important, right? And we saw that this neighborhood is 94% more expensive than any other neighborhood in Michigan. So I feel like the leadership felt that as part of a statistic that needs to be reacted to. All that being said, that's a private sector conversation about who's going to come and build that product and where it makes sense. I think we should allow for it.
Yep. Okay.
So I had a couple of, I'm on the Board of Trustees, Tanya. I have a couple of questions, and you are saying that the affordable housing will potentially be from the private investment. Is that what you're talking about, like the leadership and the economic development should look into that? Because that was my most important question. And then I was just wondering, like, we have a different park in the community where we are thinking of like building this kind of a hill and having sledding in the winter months. But my question is how, like, if you made that like a flat piece of land, like how much cost investment we have to be doing that, is like, what is the ROI on that of building a hill instead of a flat land? Like, would it be the same cost was my concern, because we would rather use those dollars to invest somewhere else. I understand it's like, we can still have an art installation in a flat land, and like, is that going to cost? And I have another question if you wanted to answer that. And then
Yeah, the affordable housing question, I think, is a land use policy conversation at the township level about where it's allowed, and then basically either you incentivize it or you do some sort of attraction mechanism to push that agenda. I think it's the right thing to do, especially in an area like this. As it relates to the hill, I mean, that's like that's a subjective conversation, meaning I believe that we're trying to maximize experience, trying to create anything and everything we can to attract the neighborhood to the town center, so that we have so many heads down there doing all sorts of things. Their kids are climbing the hill, they're rolling down the hill, the families are out there, moms and dads are there, everybody gets hungry, and everyone's like, all right, let's go to the restaurant, let's go grab a coffee at the coffee shop. Let's watch our kids roll down the hill and fly down it on the sled. Let's go and watch the kids in the fountain area. Maybe there's a wine tasting and the kids are out and there's a fountain feature and the fountains are jetting up and down and it's a wine tasting and it's adults only. There's so much different programming that we can do to get people in the town center that we want to force a reaction from the private side to say, invest here. There's stuff going on here all the time. This is the place to be. This is the town center. This hasn't happened yet. We've been waiting for it since 1990, right? And it hasn't happened the way we thought it was going to happen, because there's nothing here that's gravitating everyone to be downtown or in the town center.
Yeah, so leading with that, my last question was, you said like we are trying to build this I understand that your thought over this is if you build it, they will come, like the private investment and all this. As you have worked with different communities around the country probably. Yep. So that's my question is like. I
think you guys got tons of stuff here in Michigan, Southeast Michigan, of places, park-like places, highly programmed public places that have commercial activity all around it. And the commercial activity comes because of the program as part of the park-like setting. The program can be as simple as a sled ride all the way to main events, farmers markets, fountains, music venues, all those sorts of things that start to pull people. And then that will create the opportunity for the private investment standpoint. And we've seen it all around.
Okay. One last question. I'll hand over the mic. The thing is, based on you had one takeaway from this is local to regional, because I get the feeling when based on your presentation that this is being built for Cherry Hill Village. This is not built for like entire Canton Township or like other people in the community. We are talking about how we can develop, how we can cater to the people who live there. Yep. So as a township trustee, there are other people who live around the community that I would love to come here and have the same experience. So
absolutely, we literally we had that discussion in droves, and one of the things that I sort of came away with was this Canton Town Center at Cherry Hill Village. right? Can you rebrand this series of experiences to attract to Canton so that it fulfills Canton's need for this major public space surrounded by commercial? You think about like Plymouth, places like that, where you have the park that's sort of like the center of gravity, and you kind of have the town that kind of, you know, spokes away from that. And sort of the center of gravity, that cultural center, is here. And so how do we market and campaign to the rest of Canton and maybe even the rest of the region of all the fun things that you can do at Canton Town Center at Cherry Hill Village? It's naming conventions, but it starts to shift the focus away from it's this neighborhood's and it's exclusive and you're not invited, to more of it's a regional destination. Everyone comes here because it's part of our heritage and our culture.
I'm just going to finish up these 2 comment cards. So residential right next to the hill, appropriate for live music. I'm just going to take that one if you don't mind. Part of this is there's going to be programming in that area. So live music, concerts, that's something that would be looked at in the future as the project progresses. And then what will happen with the Human Services Building? So as is proposed, the Human Services Building will stay. And the next comment card, what do the people that live here want, meaning in Cherry Hill Village? So as part of this project, we are scheduling stakeholder discussions. Those dates have not been finalized, but we are going to be doing stakeholder discussions with the people who live in Cherry Hill Village, the Homeowners Association, business owners, property owners, residents, other key stakeholders in the area, to see what they want to. This was just the first step to get feedback on this design from the Township Board, the Planning Commission, and the Master Plan Advisory Board. But the intent is always to do stakeholder discussions with those key stakeholders in Cherry Hill Village to see if this is something they want, if this is something they would frequent. Okay, and I saw there was a hand over here. Oh, yes.
Hi. Hello?
Hey.
Okay, sorry. Kate Borninski, Board of Trustees, and also a member of the Master Plan Advisory Board. So this is kind of follow-ups to a couple of Tanya's questions. The first one is just want to get an idea of your vision for this without a lot of places that are centered around alcohol, because we have a significant minority in Canton that don't drink alcohol, and I don't think we'll be frequenting these places. So can you just give an idea of what other kinds of experiences you think would be possible?
Yeah, I mean, as a father of 3, I have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 12-year-old. My design lens and the design lens of my team, we all have kids, and this is a very family-friendly environment. There's music, there's fountains, there's places for picnics, there's lots of playgrounds and climbing walls, there's a recreational component of just having the trail systems intertwining. We're incorporating art, we're incorporating history. There's plaza areas for just social gatherings. This is a farmer's market opportunity. This is a food truck venue. This is everything and all things to create as much energy as we possibly can within the town center to attract what we're looking for, commercial investment. Those are typically restaurants and retail areas, shops, things of that nature. When you're driving this much traffic with this much entertainment, those are the things that come with that. And that's that family-friendly, focused sort of environment. And that's what we were looking to do. So I don't think any of the concepts outside of the triangle piece, because that was a conversation about the big fish. In one of the schemes, this area right here was affordable housing. And then we said, let's talk about the big fish and see what happens from there. After that, it's family friendly.
Okay. that sort of answers it. And my other sort of follow-up question is, so I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. So there's a lot of land that is in the plans that is not township owned, and I understand you're saying that we're hoping that investors will come and incorporate the
Yeah.
the plans into whatever they decide to do.
Right.
Are there? So I know that as part of the master plan, we can make some guidance on that. Does OHM have examples that they can share with us on that?
The answer is yes, but I don't know what examples of what, like land acquisition strategies, or
No, not acquisition, because I don't think that the township necessarily has the finances to do that, but to ways to encourage the development that we want.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Yes. And I can furnish the township with that information. I think, I want to go back to some of the slides at the beginning of this thing when you guys were getting tired and I was talking too long. You have a significant amount of ground that the township owns. And then the ground that you don't own, it all seems like it's still a little bit in play in terms of the possibility of a public-private partnership, of taking maybe some ground that's a liability and creating an asset out of it. So there's some sort of things behind the scenes that we're starting to see right now that are creating this sort of interconnectivity and connection. This, these parcel aggregation. We end up having a pretty cohesive ground system to basically build out this series of amenities. And I don't think this isn't tomorrow. This reimagination of this project is a series of phases over time. And I think that, probably the initial phase probably circulates around the schoolhouse and maybe incorporates the humanities building and maybe bumps across the street onto Cherry Hill Village. I think that the opportunity here is to commit to something like this, and then use this as a marketing tool to show the private sector what is being looked at as a public investment to create that ROI for yourselves. One of the things that was surprising to me is along Ridge Road, all of the ground floor retail is now turned over into residential. And so those are the places to fill first, right? And then we start to move out and start looking at these different strategies for the garage parcel, for the little pool area, and for some of the stuff that's on, the dentist's office here, and maybe even some of these homes. So for instance, this development, this is the model home. Once all these sell out, that's typically the last home to sell, is the model home. But is there an opportunity for like a first right of refusal on the part of Canton Township to grab that piece, right? When you're all done selling all your homes and you're going to sell that last home, give us first right of refusal. We'll buy that piece, and this could be more parking lot for the park and for the commercial development. So in all these renderings and all these little fun little things that we're talking about, there has to be an underlying strategy for economic development and investment. And I'm telling you that, yes, 100% to a full family affair in terms of not only these neighborhoods in Cherry Hill Village, but Canton Township residents coming here. And then they're all going to go grab a cup of coffee. They're going to grab a sandwich. They're going to buy a trinket. They're going to do all those things because that's what always happens. We've got to create that reason to come here. And so phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 are all going to be building toward the creation of that amenity.
Okay, I've got a card here. Has consideration been given to how the plan works with cost and time?
Yeah, so I think I touched on phasing. This isn't going to happen tomorrow. I think this is a 5 to 10 year plan. I think this is sort of this is the vision. I think part of that vision is you have to have something. Right now we don't have anything. Now we have a little bit of a beacon here in terms of we want to have something that looks like this. What happens from now? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I think that we're starting to have conversations of where those are and the cost implications of those phases. And we're in this like $2 to $4 million space per phase to get some of the things that we're talking about here. But we're still in that conversation with some existing landowners on potential land swaps. We're talking about opportunities to basically figure out what this first phase or two are going to look like. And a lot of that has to do with the monies that we're getting from the county, and then certainly, what's in the coffers of Canton Township, and then looking at the ROI. And in terms of schedule, we don't know yet.
Hi, my name is Summer Foster. I'm on the Township Board, the Planning Commission, and the Master Plan Advisory Committee. Well, first I want to say I kind of love the Cherry Hill. That's what I'm calling it, the Cherry Hill.
Yeah.
And I could see it as a place where teens go just to hang out and just try to get away from their parents. So, but the other thing is I fully acknowledge that parking is an issue in Cherry Hill Village, but I really dislike the idea of a parking garage, and I just wondered if there were any alternatives to that.
So our analysis showed that there were 600 spaces within walking distance of the town center. 300 were public, 300 were private, and I think a fair amount of them were on-street parking. I think that there are strategies to create public parking, more public parking, as part of the redevelopment and the development of Cherry Hill Village. I would caution to not make having parking first be the driver toward where you're trying to go. And I think I let the administration identify the phases, let us help figure out where we can spend and maximize our first sets of dollars. And then I think parking will start to answer itself over time. Parking's super important. There's no question about it. Just don't let it be the driver of where we're going tomorrow.
Hello, Diane Slavens, I'm the treasurer. Great presentation. I'm very excited. I know we've been wanting something to happen down here for many, many years, so it's so nice to see that we have a plan. And I know it's going to take many years, but I'm very excited to see this. Parking is one concern I have as well, but I'm very excited to see that we have a plan, and I understand it's going to have to go in phases. I mean, there's no question about it, but to focus on the main area to get businesses down here is great. So I'm very excited that we have a plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, John Hoffman, Master Plan Advisory Board.
Hi, John.
I really appreciate the background on the economics of the area. So clearly the market is economically very, very strong with the residential rates. Other than a perception of a lack of parking, why hasn't private commercial development happened? And is this plan addressing those reasons?
So even though you guys call it Cherry Hill Town Center, there's no meaningful public space and program that attracts the neighborhood to go to an event other than the few different things. So Slows is the great example. A food truck showed up, and people are crawling out of the houses, coming down in lines and the backed up traffic and all the things. When you guys have an event at the theater, lots of traffic, lots of bodies, lots of things, right? After that, though, it's a ghost town. It's what are the things that are going to create the value and create a regional destination are all of the family-friendly, fun activities that not just the landscape and it's what this place would support in terms of an activity or a fun thing to do with your family or friends. It's like the canvas, and we have to allow the canvas to be super flexible, and then you start to build the activity program that creates the energy in this area. That hasn't happened, and so therefore it sort of stayed stale. And then there was no activity outside of this area, and you're kind of like on the outskirts of town. And so if you don't create a reason and a destination that's a public event space, highly programmed, you're not going to get, it's never going to come to fruition. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create the catalyst that you don't have right now to attract the private sector. And you're absolutely right. Like the numbers, the demographics, like the economics of this place are out of control. They're perfect. It's like there's like the missing ingredient. If you don't have yeast, you're not going to be able to bake the cake. This is yeast.
All right. So it's been under-programmed.
Under-programmed. There's no connection. The space is not conducive to having events, having sled rides, doing a selfie, having your family come down, all the stuff that you saw. Okay. It's just not there. We have parking lots around the schoolhouse. We have roads that go around the schoolhouse. We have a giant transformer in front of the schoolhouse. We have a fountain area that is surrounded by a road, right? There's no meaningful public space that creates that energy that allows you to build a program around itself. Okay. It's everything sort of segregated and kind of pushed away and like uninhabitable.
Mm-hmm. 2 more questions.
Yeah.
I could not agree with you more that parking should not drive the design. The size of that parking structure, is that sized per what you think the parking demand would be in full build out? Because it's large. And it's directly adjacent to single family houses. So just want to confirm that that's the size that you think would be needed?
Yeah, so I gotta just be honest with you. I think it's 1 below, 1 at, 1 above. That's the deck.
Yeah.
So one deck below grade, 1 deck at grade, which is basically just a parking lot, and then 1 above grade. So it would be a 1-level deck. That's not showing a 1-level deck, but that's what I think you need. But we need a little bit more research and a little bit more understanding of what density level can we get to and what type of land use are we trying to park to.
Right.
And so that's just a deeper dive. So the safe place was to show you a deck that was a little bit more rambunctious. I don't think you need that, and I think that that's sort of the question that we have to kind of dive into on the economics and on the land use capacity and what you all feel comfortable with. And aesthetics is important as hell, especially within the context of these amazingly well-built, well-designed neighborhoods and their architecture and scale. Those are super important. And I respect the heck out of the neighborhood and how all that works and how those systems work. Mm-hmm. And I applaud you for noticing how big that sucker was.
It was big. Yep. Yeah. And then one question about the stormwater ponds. As illustrated, they're full of water, and would they be redesigned as wet stormwater ponds?
Correct.
That would be permanently wet?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Doug Weber. I'm on the Planning Commission. I've got a couple questions. First of all, you use the term private-public partnerships a lot, and that gets thrown around a lot with in a lot of different contexts these days. Can you give us examples of the parking garage would be one example, but can you give some other examples how you envision the development of this working using public-private partnership, how do you envision that working?
I mean, can I talk about what we're doing right now? Okay. So the township right now is actively engaged with the ownership of the single-family development that's right here to acquire their stormwater management system, which is those ponds. And I think the acquisition is like, we're going to take this away from you and we're going to enhance it and we'll maintain it and create an asset out of it as part of our park. And so that would be a public-private partnership at its like base, is an open invitation to helping promote the public domain. There's 99-year land lease ideas, so there could be a structure for the parking garage that doesn't acquire the land, but you in partnership with the landowner to build a garage on their property, and you'll lease it from them for a certain term. There's lots of different. There's heavy P3s that are very complicated, and there's light P3s like a willing property owner, and then there's some sort of that's the partnership. So you're right. I think it gets thrown around a ton, but I think there's some true opportunities to do that here.
I guess my question was geared more to what elements of this overall plan do you see are conducive to a PPP? And obviously the parking garage is one.
I think that's one.
The ponds are one.
Yep.
Is there any other components you see of that? Or is the rest of it pretty dependent on private investment?
I mean, there's a theory that the schoolhouse can become an active business that's leased by an operator, and then you continue to own the schoolhouse and create a lease agreement with an operator.
Okay. The other
I'm not answering your question.
Sort of. It's okay.
I think there's a lot of creative ways. I don't think we've flushed it all out yet. I mean, we're at the high level.
Yeah,
we're like
absolutely.
master planning level.
No,
We have to do a deep dive in all these different components to figure out where the opportunities
and
are.
Speaking of high level, it kind of flows into my next question. It gets back to what the residents in this area feel like about this whole thing, because when this whole area was originally visioned 20, 25, 30 years ago, I believe that it was a central area was part of the plan, and for various reasons, as you've pointed out, that hasn't really come to fruition. But the residential has exploded, and has exploded beyond the bounds of what the original Cherry Hill Village was to look like. Now to the point where these people have lived here for 20 years, for essentially 20 years. How are they going to feel about a thing that's coming in that we want to draw traffic to? And the thing I think about is a lot of where activity in this area takes place is downtown Plymouth. They have, they're very fortunate. They have that beautiful park downtown. It's very conducive to all that. But when they have big events, parking's a big problem. And you see all the no parking signs go up in front of all the people's homes and all that sort of thing. And I know all the people that live through Plymouth hate when the traffic comes in. My point is, do you feel, does the township feel that you're going to get a lot of pushback from the residents in this area? I'm sure there's going to be some that they're going to love this, but there's going to be those that say, I don't want this in my backyard.
Yeah, that's what Aaron was speaking of earlier. We're going to have
Right.
more stakeholder meetings. So this is the first one that we're having a large stakeholder meeting. We're going to have smaller ones. We're going to get input for that.
So, say you do get a lot of pushback, though. What's the plan then? Do you forgo
Well, I guess that's
this?
what we have to see what we get, right? I mean, I think that this is a concept, a high level, like Tony said, and then we're going to take a lot of the input and see where we need to make adjustments or not.
Okay.
You can't predict that, right?
No. Well, I would think, though. I mean, I know there's people that want to see something like this. I mean, I don't live in this part of town, but I love this, but I don't live here. So I don't. In the business I'm in, we talk about NIMBYs, not in my backyard, and I just wonder what kind of pushback you're going to get with this. Last thing I have. and maybe this is not your domain, but seeing this plan, you talk about businesses coming in and programming coming in and all that. Is there any thought about infrastructure as far as, and I'm not talking about roads, I'm talking about connectivity and that can be used for things like lighting and wayfinding and as far as the businesses go and the things they use for applications and all that sort of, is there any discussion as this part of that, or is that really not your domain?
No, it's 100% in my domain, and so at this level, we're not talking about that yet, but you're 1,000,000% right. I mean, just coming down Ridge Road, there's really no announcement, welcome to Cherry Hill Village as sort of a gateway. You just kind of come in and all of a sudden you're here. So like wayfinding, I think is important. I think, interconnecting, getting these crosswalks and these intersections lined up so that, you're safe and you're secure. There's tons of room for pedestrian movement, wide sidewalks, streetscapes, different things like that. I think from an infrastructure standpoint, like getting down to like stormwater management and water capacity and sewer capacity and all those things, we'll be digging into that stuff as these different opportunities arise on the private side. If they come in and say, hey, we want to build this thing, then we got to figure out on the quick step, how do we react to them with an infrastructure plan that makes sense and it's feasible and we can help them pay for it or create a situation where we can invite them in.
Thank you. And to add to that, just to let you know, on a concept for the township-wide, we're working with DTE right now to look at the infrastructure in this area included. And we're also looking at creating a broadband plan to try to study what we do have and what we need, just to follow along with what you're saying.
Tony, Michael Segrist, I'm the clerk in Canton Township. Behind the current fountain area, but what you've got proposed is a mixed-use development in Zone 2. The township owns some parcels that are currently like 5 or 6 parking spaces, and I see on your design that it looks like there's a residential, like a multifamily residential building there. Is that filler or is that intentional? Can you talk about why that's there?
Yeah, I think it was, we don't want to have a parking lot there, right? From an urban design standpoint, you want to hold up that street and you want to create that synergy. You want to have parking as part of that experience. Is that a commercial development? Maybe. Is it residential? It could be. Is it townhomes? Perhaps. Is it a filler? I think for now.
Okay. That sounds good. My next bit is just more of a comment. This kind of started out as my baby for a couple of reasons. One, we knew other communities were getting money from Wayne County for really cool projects. And we didn't want all of those tax dollars going to just other communities. We wanted to do something meaningful here. And the other part of it is I've lived in the Plymouth and Canton area my entire life. I've never lived anywhere else. But I've lived in Plymouth Township, I've lived in the city of Plymouth, and I've lived in Canton Township. I have only spent 2 years in the city of Plymouth, but my lifestyle there was substantially different. And what's interesting, what I could quantify the most, is that I felt a connection to a sense of place, because there existed a third place that wasn't school and home or work and home. And when I think about the amount of time I spend in Heritage Park or Griffin Park or Floden Park with my children, it is a very segregated experience. There is no mixed use. I can't engage in commerce, which is something that wasn't consistent with my experience in the city of Plymouth. And Cherry Hill Village was a really cool concept that never really got off the ground. And it lacks that third space. And so the idea of creating that third space, I think, is central to everything that we're trying to do. And if anything I've experienced on a personal level and that I've seen on a social level, and we've seen it in the crime statistics, we've seen it in our social worker program, is that people have felt more isolated in the last 2 to 3 years than I think they have at any point in their adult life. And so when we think about how we build place, I think it's very important that we talk about the third place, that we talk about the town square, and we talk about the ability to not have to drive to buy something and then drive to eat it, to drive to buy something and then go home and wear it, to leave my home, park in my garage, go to bed, and then drive to work in the morning, maybe waving to my neighbor on the 4th or 5th day. I think this is probably a project we would have even thought of if it didn't come out of, if we hadn't experienced COVID. That said, it was, initially hard for me to kind of adjust to the concept design that got way far from what I had initially seen. But I got to tell you, it's growing on me. I really like it, and I think there's a lot we can do. I like how the water features are like almost a green space, and so you've really got your park, your residential, your commercial, and your green space all in one area in a 36-mile square community that's done a really good job through building and zoning of segregating all of those things into separate little things, which is great if you like driving. But if you don't like driving, and we know the people who are buying houses in the next 10, 15, 20, and 30 years aren't interested in driving to Ford Road to go eat at a chain restaurant. I think this is central to the long-term success of Canton Township, and I think this is a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, and I'm going to pile on. I'm Dawn Zuber. I'm the Planning Commission Chair, and I'm also on the Master Plan Advisory Board, and I'm an architect, and I just love what you've done. I really do. Oh, sorry. So I think this is really exciting. I love the way that you have, like Michael said, woven the waterways through and created a bunch of different places, and I would be the first to make reservations at that restaurant. Up in the Triangle area. I think that's really beautiful. This is very exciting. I love the idea of the food trucks. I think this really makes a nice place for Canton, so thank you for your work. There was something else that flitted through my mind. I love the bird, too, by the way. That's the best part. But I hope we can do this. I mean, I think it's great, and thanks, Michael, for all your championship. Yeah.
I'll tell you, the most important thing for me working on this project is in the background is every design decision that we made about how this thing looks and functions has an economic reason. Why are we creating this? Where's the return on its investment? How many people you statistically look at that come to walk parks and then they go and do something quite after. They meet up with their friends, and then they go do get their steps in. They go to a concert. They go to kids congregate. Water features. Just getting away from the house. Creating these cabinets. Thinking about the winter aspects of the fountain area, the lighting shows. Where would you put the Christmas tree? You put it on the cherry. Right? I mean, there's all these things that we would do to create the program, to create the driver for people to come to the town center to have an experience, and then those dollars will be spent adjacent to this public space. There's billions of papers. There's all the things for 25 years that I've watched in my career. When you do these things, it happens. And so the backdrop to all of this fun, interesting, crazy-looking stuff is the economics and why we do it. It has to make financial sense.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the spaces are really cool. And I wanted to address what Tanya said earlier about the cost of building the hill. As an architect, I know that one of the hardest things to do when we're excavating for construction is find a place that will take the dirt. So I don't think we'll have any problem finding dirt, but you never know.
Hey, when we dig those ponds out, we got plenty of dirt.
I'm going to echo too. I really, you took me for a little ride in the beginning from the stats, but when I got through to the end, you hit it. You hit it great. I love what you got here. A couple of quick questions though. Where's the affordable housing? Where is it on this drawing? Where did you propose it? Or was it on the map?
It was, yeah, it wasn't.
Okay, that's all right. Don't worry about it. The other one was, how many total spaces are there with the garage? Just a question popped in my mind. You said 300, 300.
No. So that's what you have. There's 300 public spaces,
Right.
public parking spaces are on street or they're
Okay.
public lots, and then there's 300 like private spaces, all within walking distance of the town center.
What are you adding with the parking garage?
I don't know yet.
Okay. Okay.
And here,
Question
but let me explain why. We have to do a capacity study to basically say if this thing got built out, how many spaces will we need, right? And then I think that that's something that we sort of back into as we go. And so I just don't want this to be a parking conversation because I don't think it's a parking conversation yet. I think that comes down the line.
My last question. What would you do first to make this happen?
Yeah, so there's sort of two things going on. I think that, first of all, we don't own all the land that we're playing on right now, right? But I think that the schoolhouse area, this area, all the way to the humanities building, I think we can do the hill, and I think that the pond system is in play. There's different buckets of money right now from the county and some other things that we can do from a stormwater standpoint. There's different funding mechanisms that could allow this to happen first or in line with and in tangent with, this is probably phase one, around the schoolhouse. Go ahead.
No, I was just, you made it really look great because I noticed that there was moss or something in the lakes. I mean, it looked very well. So I like your whole presentation. You knocked it out.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got one more.
Oh, I just wanted to address the question of how this will attract private investment. There was a very a small article in the Observer a couple months ago, and I'm Kristen Thomas, Economic Development Manager for Canton Township, and that one article attracted a very popular restaurant asking about locating in Cherry Hill Village, and two other businesses as well, just from one article. And I can't imagine when people see this plan that they won't be just beating down our door to locate their very successful businesses in Cherry Hill Village.
Sure. So let me actually do something real quick to support what Kristen's saying. So imagine if you're a potential operator and you're looking for a spot at Cherry Hill Village. There's things that we can do to say, hey, this is what you would look like at Cherry Hill Village. Across the street is this amazing park. This is your parking lot that supports your business. Here's how you would look and function. This is how it would present itself on the street. This is your outdoor venue that's overlooking Cherry Hill Road, and across the streets the music venue happening, and everyone's out, kids and families and eating. But that's what their view is across the street. The fountains, all this stuff sort of knits together, and all of a sudden you have a pretty compelling reason to put your business in Cherry Hill. Whoa.
Hello, my name is Ranson Smith. I'm on the advisory board. So one of the questions I had, first a question and then a couple of comments. Have you given consideration to internet broadband access in the park itself as a way to attract people? But go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. I mean, that's a function of being a teenager, right? If you don't have Wi-Fi, you're not going. And so I think that's something that I think needs to be addressed for sure.
Okay, I've seen it. I mean, Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. She said that's the study that Canton's doing right now is a broadband study.
Okay. Having grown up, I didn't grow up here. I grew up on the East Coast, but what I've seen is that a lot of parks and a lot of areas are using opportunities like that broadband access, and recommitting and using older equipment and things like that, but bringing in that broadband access, and that tends to attract more and more, again, the younger community, but even people who tend to work at home. You'll have the opportunity to attract them to the area if they have the opportunity to utilize some broadband access. It's one of the points. I've been in Canton, I think, 16 years now, and one of the things that initially attracted me when I was looking for homes in the area was I did go into Cherry Hill Village and consider some of those homes. And I saw the opportunity for development, but it wasn't as developed, so I wound up in the fairways, closer to the summit and closer to the township, buildings and things like that because of that. But then when I started looking around, let's say like the Plymouth Fall Fest and Liberty Fest, right? I look at those as a little bit of a comparison of how they are managed. The Plymouth Fall Fest is actually in town and utilizes a space like that to kind of attract people and utilizes their town center. Whereas, for the Liberty Fest, we wind up using, the Summit area, which is a great venue, but you have opportunities like that with this type of development. So this is one of the reasons, like looking at the opportunity for what Canton was building, 15 years ago was one of the things that drew me into the area. A little disappointed that it didn't manifest up until this point, but very excited about what we're seeing right now. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Excuse me.
Hi, my name's Irfan. I'm with the Master Plan Commission or Board. I also love what you've done. It's a wonderful presentation. I love the bird, the moss, all that looks great. Didn't we have this same discussion of build it and they will come some 25 years ago? And I think at the beginning of the presentation you said we would discuss what went wrong with the original Cherry Hill Village design and why, after it was built, they didn't come. I know 2008 and the world financial crisis happened, but do we know why it was not as successful as it should have been?
I mean, I have an opinion. My opinion is that there was no meaningful public space as part of the center of gravity for Cherry Hill Village. I think that commercial sort of missed its opportunity because the western side of Canton is not developed very much. And what's the community next to you guys? Superior, right? So you're not having that full sort of like surrounding of rooftops and density to support some serious commercial activity. So therefore, you have to create that attraction with a destination, and it's not going to be a commercial destination like a signature restaurant or IKEA or something that just pulls in a ton of traffic. I think it's going to have to be a public amenity, an activity and program that's family focused that will start to create that commercial traffic. I also think it's a function of design. It's not designed to be a town center. We have serious major roads coming through. There's you have parking lots, you have like weird side roads, and just there's no park, there's no meaningful public space. It's all chopped up into little pieces and then surrounded by roads. And so I feel like that's a hindrance to how it was going to develop in the first place. I think there's maybe some not so great land use decisions related to single family homes on the northwest side of the town center. That should have been a higher density home development to more people, more traffic, more kids. And so I think that this is the opportunity to sort of fix those things and have some corrective measures, and then start to take some of the land assets that we've begotten in recent times, like the garage, take land assets that we've had for a while, like the pond or the fountain area, look at some public-private partnerships with some people on Cherry Hill Road on the south side, potentially looking at the triangle parcel as a potential acquisition, partnering with the single-family homeowner to get that the pond area, to reconfigure the historic village to become more of a meaningful place to have activities, and just that I think those, and then looking at this corner as a potential redevelopment site to support the park, those are the things I think we need to be looking at.
I 100% agree. Also, that hill, I love the Cherry Hill. If you could orient it so that you could view the stage from the hill and not just those 8 or 10 blankets on the ground.
Sounds good.
All right, we had a comment card. You spoke of ROI. Approximately how long would the investment in the plan pay for itself, including operation and maintenance costs?
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely go down that path. I think the most important thing right now is I don't think you can put a value on culture and quality of life. And so those are things that'll happen here that you can't really put a dollar sign on. You can, and people have, but I don't think that's the right answer for here right now. As it relates to the commercial activity and sort of how does this thing pay for itself or pay off, and when does that happen, we haven't figured it out yet. We could.
Okay, anyone else have any other comments? Yes.
Hi, my name is Andrew Shia. I'm a part of the advisory board. I just came late, so I'm sorry if you already answered this previously, but how does this kind of address the needs and wants of different age groups? And even with like considering kids, kind of considering the wide range of kids' activities, like little kids might prefer something smaller as opposed to older teenagers.
Yeah, so we answered it a little bit. I'll get into the specifics, but again, we, as the design team got together, we thought about all the family activities, family focused, from young to small, grandparents, little kids, toddlers. There's interments of playgrounds, plaza areas, hopscotch, park cabinets, picnic areas, climbing walls, trails, pond areas, water features. I mean, there's so many things for all age groups intertwined and intermixed in this thing. There's only so many ways you can go through the model, but when we can do more shots and more cycles through this thing, but like this is stacked full of lots of fun, interesting venues and respites and nodes and nooks that create that full-fledged young to small activity and interest. And then add the programming on top of it, and that's stuff that, from the art standpoint, from a recreational standpoint, from farmers markets to flea markets to food trucks to everything, right? I mean, everything's on the table because this canvas allows flexibility to do whatever you want to do. Big open plazas, hills to sled down during the wintertime, fountains in the summer. There's a winterizing of this fountain area so that it becomes like a light feature that blinks on and off. There's like different activities that you can do for all the holidays. I mean, it's just chock full of fun, interesting venues and spaces and things to do. And that was the intent of the reimagining, is trying to incorporate everything. Because the big notion was, we'll get the big fish and then it'll come after that. The park's the big fish, and it'll come with virtue of a well-built program and creating the spaces and places that people want to be.
Can I ask one more? Sorry, one more question. The model looks really great. How do we know that kind of the aesthetic beauty of Cherry Hill Village can be preserved and even improved on once this is implemented?
Say it a little bit louder for me.
Sorry. I said the model looks really great. It looks really pretty with the little added features. And I wanted to know how the aesthetic beauty of Cherry Hill Village would be preserved and also improved on in the future with this model.
Yeah, so a couple things. The buildings that we sort of modeled within the stuff that's new is tied back to like more of historic flavor. I think it complements what's happening within the residential architecture and certainly a little bit of the commercial that we have here. So we want to be in keeping with the architectural style and vibe of the neighborhood. We don't want to stand out. We want to seamlessly integrate. I think that there's controls on that architecture anyway within Cherry Hill Village, so those things will sort of manifest itself through policy. I think the park features themselves, I think, are a function of typical park features that are that can be unique to this place. I think that will happen both in terms of the preservation of the schoolhouse as part of the National Register of Historic Places. I also think that the cabinets, I think that the materials that we use on the ground plane, for the paver areas, the concrete areas, the crushed limestone plaza areas, all those things are natural materials that I think sync up with the context of materials that we see within Cherry Hill Village neighborhood. So I don't feel like it's going to stand out. We want to seamlessly integrate into it. But that's also stuff that's like, it's not at the master planning level, but we're thinking about it now as we design space.
I'm gonna walk this way, don't mind me, just walking this way.
Good evening. My name is Jim Castiva. I live up the road here on Ridge. And number one, I'm excited. And I think it's an exciting presentation. There's a lot of great catalytic kinds of opportunities. The yeast, as you spoke of it as being a catalyst for additional activities. A couple of points of emphasis that I'd like to reinforce and support. One is the connectivity. The pathways are extremely, in my view, extremely important. Making connections via the pathways through the ITC corridor in such a way that builds upon some of the existing connections, so that people from far east, east of Canton Center Road, can utilize the ITC corridor and connect to this vicinity. People from the hamlet can utilize the existing pathway that comes from the south, but it needs a stronger, more definitive connection up through Roosevelt and into the historic park area. So the connectivity is extremely important, and I think if we want to attract walking and walkability kind of concept, we need to think like a pedestrian. We need to think like, how does a family with a stroller react? Think like, how does a cyclist respond, and where do cyclists like to go? Ask the merchants in downtown Dexter what the benefits have been of having the connections at the B2B trail and through Hudson Mills Parkway. As a frequent user myself, every single time I stop for a bite to eat or an ice cream, every single time I cycle that route. Another concept of strong endorsement from my standpoint is the reconfiguration and reutilization of the water courses. Just think of what an attraction the existing Heritage Park ponds are for the community, and you have an opportunity to create a very, very similar type of water feature, enhanced water feature at this location. There was a question that was raised, or a point that was made, well, what might residents of the area think about this type of catalyst or this type of activity? I'm a 35-year resident of the vicinity, and I'm waiting for this. Ask the residents of the neighborhoods that surround downtown Plymouth as to whether or not they've seen an increase in their property values due to the attractiveness of the and the enhancement and the commercial vitality of downtown Plymouth. So the residential impacts, I think, are extremely positive from a personal standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint, from the economic standpoint relative to your property values. I think the township should use its properties that it's acquired or may acquire for very strategic and thoughtful kinds of leverage to do the best they possibly can to leverage additional private investment. But overall, I think this is some really great concepts that that have been put forward, and some great opportunities to catalyze this activity in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments? Okay.
Just a couple of quick questions for you. Have you planned for any electric vehicle charging facilities as people wait for things there? And the second one is, I heard there is a plan to connect various parks from downtown Detroit, maybe all the way up to Traverse City, Is this, so in that light, is there a plan for bicycle paths or something that, that we can easily come and go from this place?
Yeah, to answer your question, at the master planning level, those are all things that we're considering. Definitely, the connections and the convenience, creating the convenience for bicyclists. To this gentleman's point, every time he gets off his bike, he's going to get a sandwich, a coffee, a burger, whatever he's doing. And that's an economic flywheel. When you create the activity, when you create the nodes along the path, I think those are the nodes that are going to create the return on investment that we're looking for. As it relates to your electrical charging stations, one of the conversations and the concepts along the streetscape on Ridge was to electrify this to the point where we can have the food trucks have a place where they can perform highly, instead of having generators running and fumes going everywhere, is plug these guys in so they can be effective and create the environment that we want. And then I think from an electrical charging station standpoint, I feel like that should just be a given in public parking lots, as we look into the future. I mean, that's the future, right? It has to be.
Anyone else have a comment, question? Anything else to address? Okay. Well, then I'd like to say thank you to Tony for his wonderful presentation.
Thank you, everybody. So as has been said a couple of times, there's going to be some more stakeholder meetings where we're going to get more input from residents and organizations in the area, so more to come on that. But I appreciate all of you coming. I know our teams have worked very hard on this. So again, thank you for coming and have a great night, and there are some refreshments over there.